All right, so thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We have Janie Seiko from US Metro Bank and Duncan Malloy from Startup 425. And we will, just as a heads up, we will be recording this and we will be switching between the presentation and some spreadsheets. My name is Dean Van Dyke with SCORE. And with that, Duncan, would you please introduce Startup 425?
Sure. Thanks, Dean. My name is Duncan Malloy, and I'm here representing Startup 425. Startup 425 is an alliance of 5 East Side cities. Those cities are Kirkland, Bellevue, Redmond, Renton, and Issaquah. And they came together a couple of years ago and said, you know, there's an adequate amount of business training and education going on the East Side, but there's probably room for even more. So that's our primary mission, is to deliver things like we're doing this evening. Obviously, we're doing it in a different format. We normally would be together in one of those East Side libraries, but given the circumstances we're all dealing with at the moment, we're doing it online via webinar. And so that's really the only, we've done this will be the 3rd webinar we've given. And I know some of you have been on them already. I see the familiar names on the participation list, but just know that the content you're about to hear is identical to what you'd be getting in the library. It's not watered down, it's no different. And so this is not, you know, Startup 425 Lite. This is the real thing. It's just being delivered via a different format. So with that, I will pass it over to either Dean to introduce Janie, or Janie herself, who will do all the talking this evening. I'll be along for the ride, and we'll check in at the end and help answer any questions if I can. So thanks for coming and thanks for participating. You will all receive a PDF of whatever you see this evening. You'll get from me electronically, including a recording of this webinar. So you don't have to scribble down notes if you don't wish to. You'll get all this in the day or so. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dean and Duncan. Hi, everyone. This is Janie, and just a little bit of history for me. I have been doing small business administration loans for over 30 years now. It's hard for me to believe, but I've worked at a variety of institutions since I started in banking in 1975. So that doesn't add up to 30 years. So part of my history is working in the operations side of financial institutions. And then again, the last 30 years plus has been doing specifically small business lending to businesses who need a little bit more assistance and are unable to qualify for a conventional loan. I've worked for large institutions at a national and international level, and then small onesie-twosie branch financial institutions too. So I have a pretty broad brush with systems, etc. And I utilize that to help small business owners. And by the way, my husband and I also have a small business, so I'm right in there with you. Startup 425, this presentation is really an overview of the SBA products, the resources that the state of Washington has, a little summary of why businesses can potentially fail, and mainly what we're going to talk about are the 5 C's of credit and how to integrate those into your business plan. We touch a little bit on alternative sources of financing, and then we open it up for questions. Normally when I'm doing this live in front of you, I take questions. So Dean, do you want them to put questions together in the chat, or how would you like to do that if they do have something along the way?
Yes, if you've got a question for Janie, please drop that into the chat box, and then we'll pause during the presentation, and we'll field those questions at that time.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Dean, let's go on to the next slide. This is a visual for you to be the lender. And when I am evaluating an application, the first thing I do is I look at it for my institution's conventional loan lending criteria. And if it does not meet that criteria, then I shift to an SBA or other government program supported loan analysis. And what I want you to think about is if you were the lender and you had the opportunity to do a conventional loan of $100,000 versus an SBA supported loan for $100,000. What we're looking at here is evaluating the loan loss risk potential to the lender. And what you can see is if I were going to do a $100,000 conventional loan, the maximum estimated loan loss risk would be $100,000 because it's all at risk. And compare that to doing a loan that is eligible for an SBA program. If I were doing that same $100,000 loan and it was eligible for an SBA guarantee, in this case, the bank would or credit union would obtain a guarantee from the Small Business Administration for 85%, which would mean that the lender could recover up to a maximum of $85,000 on the $100,000 loan. So the estimated loan loss at origination of the loan is $15,000. So as a lender, if I am trying to mitigate or reduce lender risk and your business is eligible for an SBA guarantee, then I would do the loan request to mitigate the potential loss down to $15,000 versus having a potential loss of $100,000. So every time you're working with a lender, we're always evaluating the risk potential, okay? Not every loan, not every business type is eligible for an SBA guaranteed loan. So we do have to evaluate and determine eligibility. And I'm going to provide you with a document here that outlines the variety of SBA products available for small businesses, and we'll show that in a few minutes. Next slide. So the question then becomes, what do we utilize the SBA program for? Or what types of businesses are more apt to qualify for a guarantee from the Small Business Administration? And what I have here is a list. If you're a brand new business, you've not opened your doors and you've not generated any revenue, a new business is very high risk because there's no history of performance. So we often utilize SBA guarantees for new businesses. If you're an existing business and you've been in operation for 2 or more years, sometimes you will have sporadic or up and down earning history, where not every year is a great year to demonstrate repayment capacity. So if there's some up and down history in terms of revenue and profitability for the business and changes in cash flow, that may be a reason we use an SBA guarantee. The other one is the one that is the most common reason I will do a loan in conjunction with a Small Business Administration guarantee, and that is the insufficient liquidation value of collateral. Well, what does that mean? What that means is we typically require collateral to secure the loan. And we look primarily at the business's assets first. And then we look to the personal assets of the 20% or more owners of the business. And when we apply liquidation value percentages or fire sale values to the market value of different assets, oftentimes borrowers do not have enough liquidation or fire sale asset value to support the entire loan amount at the origination of the loan. So this is one of the typical and most often used reasons for doing an SBA guarantee. The other is sometimes businesses can qualify for a loan with a smaller payment. And that's another reason we use the SBA guarantee products. If we were doing a loan to help you buy a piece of equipment, and that piece of equipment had a 5-year useful life, on a conventional loan, we would do that maturity and repayment over 5 years. The SBA guarantee will allow a lender to do that repayment over a 10-year period of time. And that reduces your monthly payment by almost half, not quite. So it helps you be able to qualify your cash flow for that equipment loan purchase or whatever else your funding needs are in your day-to-day operation. The other one is capital from owners. Here's the interesting thing with this. For a conventional loan, if I were going to do a loan to a startup business, you as the business owner would probably need to put in at least 50% of the total asset cost of that business. Compare that to putting in a minimum of at least 10% of the total assets. So if I were looking at funding a project where the total asset need to start your business was $100,000, you as a business owner would have to come in with $50,000, and we would do a $50,000 loan potentially on a conventional basis. However, if I were doing that with an SBA guarantee, then you would come in with $10,000 and we could potentially loan up to $90,000. That's more achievable for many business people. So that is the capital piece that we lend with an SBA guarantee on. And then sometimes there are industry considerations. If, for example, you're doing a business, you want to buy something that may be a convenience store gas station. A convenience store gas station situation has high potential environmental contamination. And most financial institutions do not want to do those on a conventional basis because of that contamination risk and exposure. However, we could do it with an SBA guarantee because we're mitigating or reducing our risk significantly on that transaction with the guarantee. That's an environmental example. Another one is a hotel. It's a special use property, and the value of a hotel is not necessarily the real estate. It is evaluated based on the cash flow, occupancy, room rates, and things like that. And that's how the real estate value is determined. When we're in a situation like right now, when you have very little travel, those hotels' cash flow will drop significantly. And in turn, when an appraiser is evaluating the building risk or value, it's significantly lower than in a high period of revenue because the cash flow is significantly less. So those are examples of how we use the SBA guarantee to support some of those industry considerations. So I'm going to pause right there for just a second, and I just want to share with you, with the Small Business Administration, there is a wealth of information on their website. And just to give you a little history, the Small Business Administration has been around since about 1953 as a federal agency, and it's evolved its products over the years, which is really great and adaptive, and they're still doing that today. And that website there is an outstanding source of information for you, and it gives you information about how to put business plans together, what their loan products are, lenders to contact that do a lot of volume with SBA guaranteed products. So it's an outstanding resource. And then the other website that I like to direct you to is seattle.score.org. And Seattle SCORE, the Senior Corps of Retired Executives, they are an outstanding resource, especially for new businesses, because they can help you digest how to put your business plan together and do a quality job about your presentation. They also have several templates, one of which I'm going to show you today on that site to help you put your business plan together. And I'm going to focus here for a second on the business plan. Whether you're a brand new business or not, it's always a great idea to have a plan and think of it as a skeleton or an outline for your business. It's a goal setting tool to help you establish who you want your primary client base to be and what you think they're going to generate for you in terms of revenue. And it helps you adapt because you'll know at a focal point in time who your competitors are, what regulations there are for your industry, whether it's at the federal level or the state level, that impact how you can do business day to day. And then as the world evolves and the dynamics change, you can go back into your plan and adapt and expand your client base or contract it down based on what's happening in your business. So a business plan is vital for any business owner to keep a direction and goal setting for your business. Okay, let's go to the, let's change here a little bit right now and go to the SBA programs that are available, just so they can see what's in that. And go to page 1. Okay, we'll go with the SBA guarantee loan process while Dean is trying to find the other. Here's what I want you to understand. You as a business owner can go to the SBA and look at the website, talk to the staff there, and you could do that pretty much at any time. But the whole thing that we as lenders are responsible for are accepting your application. So you apply to the financial institution of your choice for a loan. And the financial institution processes the request. We apply to the Small Business Administration for the guarantee. We service, we close the loan, we do everything to disperse the money. And when your business has challenges and you need a little bit of help, you come to the lender, all right? And even if your business didn't do well and we had to exercise the guarantee, that would all be done with us. So the lender is responsible really for working with you throughout the life of your SBA loan. We're your champion, we're your confident, we are the person and crew that's going to help you. So usually business owners get assistance from the SBA at the beginning of the process if they're going to get any interaction with them at all, and then it's turned over to your lenders. And keep in mind, lenders are commercial banks as well as credit unions to do these loans. So what Dean put up here is the one of 2 pages. We're just going to focus on this one because it has the most common products that we use. But what I want you to see, and this is going to be a document that you're going to receive, is the types of programs, what they're called. There is a program specifically for veterans. It's the SBA Veterans Advantage Loan Program. There's a little bit of unique underwriting with that. But what I want you to see is the maximum loan amounts under the programs, the level of percentage guarantees that lenders would obtain under each one of those programs, how you as the borrower can use the money, what the maximum maturities are, maximum interest rates, the guarantee fees and how lenders like me calculate them, who's eligible, and the benefits to you as the borrower. So it's a nice little cheat sheet. There's a second page, but we're not going to pull that up because I just really want you to see what's here. So what I do want you to know is Wall Street Journal Prime, which is the most common index that lenders use to set the price for your loan. Wall Street Journal Prime today is 3.25. If you were going to do a loan that had a maturity under 84 months or under 7 years, the highest rate on a loan over $50,000 or so we could charge is 2.25% over the spread. So that interest rate starting out would be 5.5% right now. If you were doing a loan with a maturity of 84 months or more, then we could go up to 2.75 for the spread, which would put you at a 6% starting rate. And on the guaranteed loans, the financial institutions at their discretion, when they approve your loan, can do, in most cases, monthly interest rate changes based on changes in prime. Most of us do quarterly on the calendar quarter. And then sometimes if we have more fixed assets, like a residence that we're taking a lien on or a commercial property that we're taking a lien on, we may do interest rate adjustments every 5 years. So what that means is that if you have a monthly change in your rate, potentially, if prime changes any time in a particular month, we will have to reset your loan for the interest rate based on the change in prime at the last part of the month, okay? So these quarterly rates, again, on the calendar quarter, your interest rate will hold for 3 months, and then it may change if there's a change in prime at the beginning of the following quarter, and so forth. So rates are really low right now. And the guarantee fees can range for a traditional loan anywhere from 2% to 3% to 3.75 based on the actual guaranteed portion of the loan amount. And again, guarantees from the SBA can range anywhere from 50 to 75 to 85 or 90%, depending on the program that we're using. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. And I see that there may be 3 questions in there. So we could stop and take them right now as you're transitioning back.
So I don't know if those are questions. So
Okay.
I just posted the links to the slides.
Oh, okay.
Let me...
I don't see any questions, Janie, but
Okay.
participants, please feel free to ask questions at any time using the chat box, and we'll be sure and respond to those.
Yes, and again, this is a little bit just about the, the process that I went over, and we'll scoot through that one. So the federal level with the SBA is very important. But the other thing I do want to point out for you is that there are a lot of state resources that you have as well. If you are a veteran, the Department of Veteran Affairs for the state of Washington has a certification process. And as part of that certification process, if you qualify for a business loan from an institution, you may be able to participate in the linked deposit program. And this program allows you to have up to a 2% interest rate reduction on your eligible loan. So you do need to check on that website to see which institutions are participating in that certification linked deposit program process. Right now, because the deposit rates that the banks are paying is so low, you won't probably get the full 2%, but you'll get something. That and that rate reduction is good for a 5-year period of time, and it can be implemented at any point on your loan. So the thing that I love about that website is it does provide a list of all the certified veteran businesses in the state, and it gives you an opportunity to support veteran-owned businesses. And there's a lot of other information on there. If you are a woman or an ethnic minority-owned business or both, then you're not a veteran, you may want to get certified as a minority or an ethnic minority or woman-owned business. And you can do that application through the Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises with the state of Washington. And what you can do is actually get certified at the state level and the federal level by going through their application process. Women and ethnic minority-owned businesses also have a linked deposit program, again, with up to a 2% interest rate reduction. And there is a list there on their website of the eligible businesses that participate in that program too. So there is a classification for a DBE, or disadvantaged business enterprise. And that is a little bit different classification level. But again, there's a lot of resources on these websites to help you as a small business owner become more successful. And the thing that I like about them is that they do give you an opportunity to have a voice, because you get a lot of information sent to you at the federal and state level about what's going on and impacting your business in the government, at the government level. So it's a great resource for you. And again, a lot of information there. The other link that I encourage people to use is Access Washington. And that is a resource for business owners in our state. And it gives you links to all of the other state agencies that are at the taxing level, which is Department of Licensing, Employment Securities, the Department of Revenue. There's also a link in there to the IRS, and a lot of other loan and grant program resources that the state offers. So all of those are great resources for you. All right, let's advance the slide. So I was asked a while back to include some reasons for business failures, and I don't like to dwell on the negative, so it was kind of hard for me to put this in. But what I tend to do is have you think about it as the opposite. How can you be successful? What will help you? So what you want to really do is think about having enough cash when you start your business or you're going through an expansion. Think about having a very functional management system. If you're having weaknesses in managing the day-to-day operations, think about that. Think about those weaknesses and how you can alleviate them. Planning is really key. think through as much as you possibly can about how you're going to do your marketing, how you're going to do your outreach to your clients, who your competition is, and focus on how to do your marketing for that position with or against your competitors so that you're more successful in penetrating your market. If you have staff members, don't be afraid to delegate to them. That's what they're there for. Think about training them and getting them up to speed so that they're performing at a standard or level that you will know is successful for your business. Again, think about how to put this together and really look at doing a good market analysis, especially for those that are startups. Use the census data. We're doing a census right now. The information is going to be really fresh about number of households in your community, whether your community is just your city, your county, your state, or global. The census data will impact you for our country, obviously. So think about using that information to your advantage about, again, households, number of people in a household, what the demographics of that household are, how many children, what the average income is, those kinds of things that will help you be more successful in penetrating and identifying your market base. And I'm going to tell you right here, also, normally when we're in a library, the librarians start the presentation off. They talk about all the resources that are at the library. There's a tremendous number of resources there in terms of looking at data for your industry. So utilize your libraries as much as you can to help identify and expand the marketing issues on your business in terms of differentiation. Okay, next slide. Okay, so, before I go into the 5 C's of credit, I usually take a little bit of a breather, let everybody ask any questions that they have. You can pop them in that chat. If there are none, then we'll just keep moving along. Yes, does the SBA offer loans for a franchise business? Absolutely. And there is a website that is called the Franchise Registry. And when you go in to that website, at the top, it kind of looks like you have to have a user ID and password, but you really don't. There's another search engine on that front page of the website, or first page of the website, that you can go in and put in your franchise name and or the corporate name of the franchise, do a search, and they actually have data there to see if that business or franchise model has had SBA loans in the past. The information on there that we as lenders, when we log in, can obtain is the performance of the franchise in terms of failure rates. And hopefully there aren't many, but that are in a failure mode. But sometimes some franchises are stronger than others and have a little bit higher success rate for their franchisees. So we evaluate those things when we go in and look at that. But that's an outstanding question, and there is that resource for you. And we're going to talk about franchises here when I'm talking about the capacity piece of the 5 C's. So Dean, let's hit, what are the 5 C's? They are capacity, cash flow, capital, collateral, and character. And we're going to talk about each one of those in a little bit more depth. So let's start with capacity. And next slide. Okay, capacity. This is the first of the 5 C's, and I like to focus on this one because really, in my opinion, it is the most important one out of all of the 5, because your capacity to operate your business drives the rest of those C's in many ways. So what people like me are looking for and evaluating when you come in is if you have 2 years of recent industry experience for the business that you want to do if you're a startup, or if you're already in business, how long have you been doing it? For startups, the other thing that we look at is your transferable skills, because a lot of us have a work history or education or certifications, and that all that wealth that is you in terms of your knowledge and your skills sometimes transfers over to another industry more successfully than others. So we look at a combination of everything, but we do try to look for 2 years of recent history in the industry that you want to start a business in. If you're an existing business owner, then we're going to rely more heavily on how you have performed in your business for the last few years and how you've managed your successes and your challenges as a business owner. What we do ask from everyone is that if you are a 20% or more owner of the business that either you own or want to start, we ask you to provide a resume. And when I talk about a resume, I want you to think of something that's really beefed up. I want to know not only what your jobs have been, what your education has been, but I want you to tell me what you did well, what skills you garnered in those positions that transfers over to your business that you're operating right now. And think about it from the standpoint of what do I do? What do I bring to the table that will help me be successful in this business that I'm operating or want to operate? And I'll give you an example for me. You already know I've been doing this small business lending for a long time. But if I told you that for each employer, I added value by earning fees that supported my salary, that I had very low loan loss rates on my loan portfolios, that I went out and I did community outreach, much like this, in terms of educating small business owners in the community. And compare that to just saying, I've worked in the industry for 30 years. That's the difference between a skinny a skinny resume versus one that's more beefed up. Okay, because now you know my performance is a lot better than just being in an industry for a while. Okay, so when you're thinking about putting your resume together, think of that and build up and talk about yourself and the skills that you possess. We also recommend, if you're going to have key people in your business that add a lot of value for industry purposes or certain skill bases, then you may want to put their resume in too, so we can see the full complement of not only the ownership experience in history, but also key people that you're putting in the business to help you be successful. So again, resumes focus on the skill bases that you have as it relates to your work history, education, and training for the business that you want to do. And here's a couple of exceptions. If you are purchasing an existing business, then the seller may be able to stay on if you negotiate it as part of the purchase and sale agreement, may be able to provide transition training, introduce you to the client base, introduce you to their vendors, train you on the processes that are in the business that have made it successful in the past. And if you're buying a business and you are going to keep the seller on board for a period of time to help you get up to speed in that business, the seller can only stay for a period of 12 months maximum to help you. After 12 months, they have got to exit the business and turn it over to you entirely for management. All right. So you can keep them on board for not more than a 12-month period of time. All right. When you're talking about a franchise operation, again, this cues up and segues very well into the question asked. When you have a franchise that you're buying into, you are buying into the success and replication of that success from that franchisor. And you're paying a franchise fee, and you're generally paying royalties. And in exchange for that, you're getting access to how to duplicate their successful plan. Most franchisors offer a training program that you have to go through and pass in order to be able to be a franchisee. They provide ongoing support and technical assistance. A lot of them provide software systems to manage the numbers and manage the operating performance. Sometimes you buy product from them. But in order for that franchise to be eligible, you have to, as the franchisee, be able to set prices and control all of your operating profit and what you do with that, regardless of being in a franchise. Some franchises are not eligible because they exert too much control as a franchisor or over the day-to-day operation of the business. So when you go on that franchise registry, if you look to see if the business has been eligible for a guarantee from the SBA in the past, that'll be the first indicator. However, I will tell you that I have helped a number of businesses become eligible under the SBA program to become a franchise that qualifies for an SBA guarantee. So if there are any questions, the SBA actually does a review of the operating plan and makes a decision. They give guidance on whether or not everything's okay for that franchisor. And they also request from time to time franchisors to make changes to their agreements to comply with SBA. And if the franchisor is willing to do so, then they become SBA compliant. Okay? So, again, this is really a big deal for the capacity, because if you cannot demonstrate enough knowledge in your industry, especially for a startup business, to say, I can do this. I know that I have the skill base from my training, my education, my certifications, and my work history to be able to make this business successful. It doesn't matter what the other 4 C's are. So you really need to focus on this and make this capacity issue the strongest piece of your business plan in order to keep moving forward. Are there any questions on this? Looking like the chat box doesn't have any. So let's go on to cash flow. Okay, cash flow is the second most important out of the 5 C's. And here's the reason. Because if you're an existing business, we can look at your operating profit and the cash that's generated from your business historically. That's one way to evaluate it. For a startup business, we are going to be relying on your projections, and we will request you to do 2 years of cash flow projections and write assumptions about how you're deriving those numbers. Okay? And we're going to evaluate them based on our knowledge of the industry that you're doing. We're going to evaluate it based on maybe some other borrowers that we have that are in similar or even the same industry. The other thing that we're going to utilize is industry averages. And here's where the libraries come in, because there is an industry average book. It is called Risk Management Analysis, RMA. And this book has a lot of different industries in it. And it's about, about an inch or so thick. And there are 2 pages for all the industries that they have put in this book. And I like to use the page that gives you information on your peers in terms of what the composition of the balance sheet looks like, what the composition of the income statement looks like, and a lot of different performance indicators and that we use to evaluate your presentation. So it's a great tool for you to know about and utilize and understand what's in it for your business. And the income information page of it breaks down your peers based on revenue size annually. So the first one is 0 to $1 million. The next one is $1 million to $3 million, $3 million to $5 million, and so forth. Because based on the size of the business in terms of revenue generation, your performance numbers can look entirely different than a significantly larger revenue generating company in your industry. So look at those and understand them. And we're talking about things like evaluating how much cash and liquidity the business has. We look at how much capital your peers have in their business versus their debt amounts. A lot of things like that that are very good evaluative tools. So when we are looking at a startup business, what we're looking at is that cash flow projection. So we're going to look at how you're estimating your sales or revenue. Are they achievable? We're going to look at cost of goods and see if they're reasonable compared to your peers. And then also look at the operating expenses to see if they're reasonable too. Okay, so now we're going to transition over to that cash flow projection document. And while Dean is pulling that one up, what I'm going to say is the one he's pulling up is one that is a template on the SCORE website. And it's the 12-month cash flow document. And I want you to see it because what it has on there is a list of expenses. The document is in an Excel format and it's pre-populated. All the boxes are. If you're talking about something that is generating cash income or inflow to the business, then it will be a positive on that sheet. If you're having an outflow for an operating expense or cost of goods sold, then it will be a negative box, okay, automatically. So when we get that form up, do you have that one, Dean? Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Okay, so again, you can see it's from SCORE, 12-month cash flow document. And what I encourage people to do with this form is really start in the middle of it, where it says cash paid out. If you have a manufacturing type of business or wholesaling business or retailing business, you're going to have purchases of raw materials or some type of inventory. Okay, so on these lines where you see purchases and to specify, that is for any business that has inventory. And the really nice thing about this document, again, because it's in Excel, you can add lines, you can delete lines, you can type over and change the descriptions of all of those boxes on the left. So if you have multiple product lines that you're doing, you may want to have a cost of goods sold for product 1, product 2, product 3. Okay, so it's a great tool for you, and it automatically, with every time you change a number in there, it automatically reformats itself to update the numbers. So you can play with this for hundreds of times until you get to the point where it's really a cash flow document that you feel represents what your business will be doing over the course of the next 12 months. And then you use the same document to do a second year, so that for startups, we have a 24-month period. If you're an existing business, you also want to do a cash flow projection for the 24 months, because if you're expanding and growing your business, you may be going into new market segments. So you might want to go through the same process for us as an expanding business. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the other things that are on that cash paid out. Gross wages is in there. And here's the thing, if you've been in your industry for 2 years, you should know how much you're going to be paying your staff, your labor, and what you have to do for benefits and things like that to maintain them or attract them to your business. So that's why, again, the industry experience is so important, because it helps you put valid numbers in these. The one right below that is for payroll expenses like taxes and things like that. Again, by going to the Department of Labor and Industries, the Employment Security, the IRS website, you'll be able to tell how much your rates are going to be for all of those payroll related taxes. And also what's important is you're going to know when you have to pay them, sometimes monthly, sometimes quarterly. So the timing of when you have to use that cash is key. And what I want you to just look at here, if you go up to the fiscal year begins, I populated that for May 20. It's on the upper right hand side, right below where the score blue is. You can change that at will also. You just hover over it, and then in your change box where the FX is up at the top, you can just change the date to whenever you're going to start. And then when you hit enter, it'll automatically repopulate the month and the year in the boxes at the top of those columns. So I put in May 20th just to keep it fresh. And but you can put in any period there that you want. Okay, so this helps you plan when you're going to have an expenditure based on the type of expense it is. Other things that are there are things like outside services. If you're going to do a restaurant, you may have a linen and uniform cleaning service. That's an example of an outside service. We break down supply costs for the office and operating. You know, if you're going to have invoices or paper needs to print out material so that you can do your billing properly, things like that. Those are office supplies that you would put on those lines. And again, you can go out and get estimates based on what you think your volumes are going to be. Usually that supply line is pretty small. If you're going to lease a space and you're in an older building, for maintenance and repair, you may want to budget a little bit high on there, because you never know when you're going to have to replace something or modify something in your building space, as opposed to going into a brand new facility that is up to code on everything. Okay. Oftentimes when client base has gone into older buildings, they've had to spend a little bit more on improving the space and maintaining it just because of the age. So again, think about logically what you're going into for your business and how much you think you might have to have for ongoing repairs and maintenance. Advertising is a real critical one for existing and new businesses because you're expanding your market. So what I would encourage you to do there is really think about how you're going to develop your marketing plan. Are you going to have a website? Does that website need to be updated daily, weekly, monthly? Plan on having that service. Get out there and get services to set up all of your different social networking and how to penetrate all of those things. I'm not a real good one with that because I just don't tweet and all, all of that. But not everyone is me. So you need to do that outreach to your client base and attract them in. Okay, so plan for those costs. If you could do it on your own, no problem. But most of the time, it's great to have that resource out there to develop your website and keep it fresh and interesting. Okay. Other things that are in advertising, brochures. Maybe you want to do radio ads. Maybe you want to do TV spots. Maybe you want to do print media. Okay, find out what the costs of those things are. Get bids, and then do your estimates from there. Okay. If you are going to be in your vehicle and doing traveling in the vehicle or deliveries, things like that, think about not only your fuel costs, but your wear and tear on your vehicle and what it's going to cost to maintain it. So those are the things that go in that car delivery and travel. Sometimes businesses have to go to conventions or trade shows. So you want to budget those in seasonally as you need to do them and make sure you've got the costs allocated appropriately. For accounting and legal, what I would probably put in there too is not just the accounting, but if you have to hire a bookkeeper to do your books on a monthly basis, budget that in. That's a little bit different than having your accountant do your tax returns at the end of the year. If you are a business that does a lot of contract work, then you may want to have an attorney, and you may have attorney's costs more frequently than other businesses that aren't involved in day-to-day contracting. So again, think about your business, think about your needs. When if your accounting and bookkeeping are really key to managing the numbers of your business, okay? And the success rate of your business increases exponentially if you look at your financial performance more frequently, okay? So what I tell small business owners to really target to do is look at their operating performance at least on a weekly basis, so that if anything is going awry, you can correct it right away rather than at the end of the month when the damage may be done, okay? So again, the more control you have over your financial information, like your income statement, your profit and loss, and how money is coming into the business, how quickly you're collecting on your accounts receivable, how quickly your inventory is turning. All of those things help you be more successful and adapt and make changes. If certain products are not turning as rapidly as you want them to and selling as frequently as you want to, maybe you get rid of that product and focus on the ones that are turning more rapidly and giving you a higher revenue generation and higher profitability. So again, knowing your numbers is really important. So having a bookkeeping service to help you, or having somebody on board, if you can afford that, those things are key. So budget accordingly, okay? Rent is another issue here. When you're looking at your lease for your space, some of them are single net, some of them are double net, some of them are triple net. So you need to know what you're going to be responsible for other than just the base rent. So when we're talking about the single, double, and triple net, what we're talking about there is what is your base rent and what are you going to be responsible for your landlord for things like common area maintenance, property taxes, prorated among all of the other tenants in the building. When those prorations are going to change and increase, when your landlord's going to make those adjustments. When you're looking at your lease, the other thing I want you to really look at too is how long you're going to be in the space. If you are doing a 10-year loan with a lender like me, we're going to ask to see your lease to make sure that you have access rights in your space for up to a 10-year period of time, okay? And we're going to look at the initial term of the lease plus extensions or renewals to make up that up to 10-year period of time, okay? We're also going to look at when and how often your rent can be changed, okay? Because we want you planning ahead and making sure that in your second year, you're going to not have a problem. And I need to find my cord. Excuse me just a second because I need to make sure I don't fail you on my computer. Hold on. I'm back. I'm plugging in my power cord. Okay, so rent. That's a lot of information for you. Let's see. Okay, is it common to have a percentage rate along with paying a base rent? Yes, it can happen, but it's not really that frequent. I'm going to give you an example. If you're in an area that's high traffic, high tourism, and you have a landlord that recognizes this, then you may have the base rent plus a percentage of revenue. And an example of that would be for the Pike Place Market, the public district association that's down there. They have their leases set up like that. Sometimes restaurateurs have their restaurants set up like that too. But more often than not, you're generally going to see a base rent, and when your year is up, you may see an increase based on the consumer price index increases, okay? Any other questions about rent, the lease? I would always recommend that you go out to a leasing agent in the area you want to have your facility. Tell them what you're going to use your property for, how big of a space you need, and then they're going to help identify what your lease rates are per square foot. And then you can do an estimate of your rent. You do not have to sign a lease. You can get a letter of intent from the landlord that identifies a lot of things, one of which is if you're going to be doing a brand new space, the landlord from time to time will help you develop the space, and they will give you um, an allowance per square foot, and they would put that information into your letter of intent in the lease. So anyway, you can get that information from them. It never hurts to ask a landlord if they will help you develop your space, okay? Because again, that's money that you don't have to borrow, but that you're getting as part of your lease over the life of it, okay? Telephone and utilities, those two things are, again, things that you can control and get bids on. Depending on what your telephone system is, it can be as simple as using your cell phone. But if you're in a restaurant, you may want to have a landline. If you're doing an executive suite, you may want to have a much more complex telephone system. So again, look at the needs of your business and get quotes from your telephone provider and write those numbers into your cash flow projection. For utilities like gas, garbage, electricity, you can actually call your local public utility district, tell them the type of business you're going to have and the number of square feet you're going to be in, your frequency of when you need garbage pickups, things like that, and they can give you a pretty good quote on what your costs will be. All right, that way you're not just shooting in the dark here at a number. You can actually estimate it and get a pretty good idea. On the insurance line, this one's, again, very interesting because normally when you think about business insurance, you think about business asset replacement or general liability. But I would challenge you to talk to your agent and talk about things like business income replacement. And I'm going to tell you, this is topical. With this virus, many businesses are closed. And unfortunately, when they are looking at their policy, viruses are not included in that lost income insurance. So, you know, you want to think about the insurances that you're getting, why you need them. I can give you multiple examples of why some businesses had to involuntarily close, and not because they weren't doing well, but because something happened. There was damage to their building one way or another, and they could not operate, or they had inventory loss as a result of some damage. Those are incidents of business income insurance would be helpful for you as a business owner. The other thing that we ask you to do from time to time is have key person life insurance. If you are the sole operator of the business and or you are the sole income provider for your household, we tend to encourage you to get key person life insurance to have the loan paid in full, so your family is not carrying a burden of a business loan that they don't have the ability to operate, and they don't have an ability to repay. The other thing is, again, in that same circumstance, we would oftentimes ask you to get disability coverage so that you had enough money if something did happen to you where you could make the business loan payment and pay all of your personal debt obligations. So insurance is multiple levels, and it's all about insuring your risk so that you can continue your day-to-day operation. When they're talking about taxes on the next line, we're talking again about real estate property taxes. Again, in your leases, you may have a requirement that you have to pay your common area maintenance and or prorated tax periodically, which would be more than likely every 6 months to the landlord. So you want to build those numbers in. For interest expense and the principal reduction that's right below the subtotal there, what you want to think about is asking your lender how much the monthly payment would be on your loan when do the payments actually kick in. Oftentimes, lenders can do interest-only payments for a period of time on your loan at the beginning. So if you are building out a space and it's going to take 90 days to get your construction done, we're going to do interest only for that period. But we're also going to recognize the fact that you're probably not going to be generating all the revenue that you would like to in those first 3 or 4 months after you're open. So we would typically do 6 months of interest only payments, 3 during the construction and 3 for when you're opening. And then your principal reduction along with the interest payments would start in the 7th month. So again, there's some flexibility there, and those are just a couple of examples on the payments. But we can tell you how much your payments are going to be in an estimated pretty close approximation. And you want to build those numbers in and split them up between the interest and the principal. And then if you have any other expenses that are specific to your business, go ahead and add them in. Again, this form is adaptable. What you want to do after you get your numbers for all of your expenses and cost of goods in is look at your subtotal line, I think on number 35, and let's see, yeah, 34, 35, right there. That number, and at the end of every month, will be more and more and more and more negative until you go back up to the top and start putting in your numbers for your revenue and cash in, okay? And again, here you can add product type 1, product type 2. You can adapt and expand those lines. If you're collecting money from accounts receivable, you can manage the timing of that in the collections from credit accounts line. So again, very adaptive tool. And the thing here is this: if you put all of your cash paid out in first, then you know how much you need to generate in revenue every month to catch up and cover all of your expenses over that period of time. And here's the thing: for startup businesses or existing businesses that are expanding, if you have negative numbers during that first 12-month period of time, look for the most negative. And this again is after you've estimated your revenue, your cash coming in on a monthly basis. Look for the most negative number, because that is what you should have at a minimum for a cash reserve when you start your business, okay? And that's at a minimum. I always tell people, put a little bit more in there, budget for a little bit more so you have a sufficient cushion of cash so you don't run out of money during especially that first 12-month period of time, okay? And when we're looking at your cash sales, we're analyzing it. We're breaking it down by month, by number of hours you're going to be open, by number of customers you think you're going to have, your pricing of either your hourly rate or your product that you're selling. Because what we really want to do is hone in on how many customers do you really need to service every day on average to achieve your revenue stream, okay? So it's a real logic path here with these numbers. Okay, that's a lot of information, I know that, but are there any questions on the cash flow projection document before we move on? No? Okay. Either I'm doing really good or really bad, never know. All right, so let's move along to the capital. Yeah, we're going to go for capital. Well, Dean is putting that up. What I want you to think about for capital is this represents the amount of money that you as the business owner are putting in and investing in your business. Okay. And think back to what I said earlier. With an SBA product, it allows you to put in significantly less than a conventional loan. So the question that we always have as for an applicant is, do you have enough cash or in-kind assets to qualify for the loan you're asking for? All right. And capital, again, can be a transfer of your personal cash into the business, or it can be a transfer of in-kind assets from you personally into the business. What do I mean by that? Well, if you saw me right now, I'm going to make a little noise, but I love jewelry. Okay. So if I started a business called Janie's Junkie Jewelry, I could take bracelets and rings from my personal possessions and transfer them into inventory in my business. I have to assign a cost value to each piece of jewelry I would be transferring in, okay? But because they are my personal asset and I have the ability to establish a market value for them when I am putting them in for resale into my business, I can count that as an in-kind asset. So anything that is a physical asset that I own personally, I could maybe transfer into inventory for the business. Or if I have a computer or furniture or desks, anything like that, computer, all of those things that I own personally, if I am transferring them into the ownership of the business, that is part of my equity contribution, okay? So again, it doesn't have to just be cash. It can also be physical assets. All right. So what we're going to look at is, let's pull up a balance sheet, the form that I created I think I did it in Excel, Dean. Because what I want to show you is this. If you are receiving money from family members or friends or other investors, and they are lending you money and saying, we want you to repay this, your financial institution lender can still analyze that as part of the equity in your business. And how we do that is we have those individuals sign what we call a debt subordination agreement. And what effectively it does is it says, okay, as the owner is responsible for repaying the bank or credit union debt, financial institution debt, before they pay me back as a family member or a friend or investor or the seller of the business, okay? So even though you load it in on the balance sheet as a note payable to yourself or to a family member, friend, investor, or seller, we could analyze all of those or any of them as part of the equity, okay? So when we're looking at this ratio, remember what I said at the beginning, you could have as little as 10% and borrow up to 90% of the total assets that you need in your business, okay? So when you're looking at your cash flow projection and you're saying, okay, I have a $50,000 negative cash position in month 7, you should have in cash on that balance sheet at least a $50,000 amount in there, if not more, to be able to support your future cash need in your business. Accounts receivables are generally for existing businesses, but if you're an inventory-based company, you want to put your inventory, your initial purchase needs for your inventory on this balance sheet on the asset side. Any equipment needs, furniture, fixtures, leasehold improvements, anything that's going to cost you money to do your business. You're going to estimate that and put it on the left side of the balance sheet as an asset need. If you're buying a business, you will likely have goodwill and a non-compete agreement. If you're starting a business, you're going to have organization costs. All of the things that you spend money on for your business are going to fall somewhere on the asset or left side of that balance sheet, okay? And what then I'm going to do is look at what is your total asset amount when you're starting your business. That's also called the total capitalization requirement. So don't let that throw you if you're talking to a lender. It just means how much in total assets do you need to open your doors, all right? And then on the liability side, if you have accounts payable, that's usually for your vendors. If you have a business credit card or you're using personal credit cards in the business, you would list them there. If you borrow money from a lender like me, that would be your note payable to lender. Again, the other things that we talked about, you could put your equity injection in as a note payable to owner. And what I always encourage you to do is talk to your accountant, talk to your attorney when you're organizing your business or you're making changes to your existing legal entity, so that you want to make sure you're doing it in the best way for you, both legally and from an accounting standpoint, so that you are maximizing your investment in your business. So to recap here, when we're looking at this document, we're going to look at all the people that you owe money to, all right? And when we get to the bottom, I missed a line on this document. Right above equity, I should have total liabilities, okay? And that will be all of your trade debt from accounts payable, any credit cards you have in the business, who you owe money to for a financial institution in the lender, and then anybody else you owe money to or your business actually owes money to. And you're going to have total liabilities. And then your owner investment is your equity. And again, that can be cash that you put into your business. It can be hard assets for inventory, equipment, furniture, anything that you're transferring from your personal name into the business. And the thing is, again, SBA allows the total debt to be at a ratio of $9 of debt for every dollar of equity. All right. That's the maximum allowed. Ideally, we want that ratio to be lower, because the less money you owe to others, the more stable your business is from an asset and liability standpoint. So what we help you do is we look at this document that you've put together and we start trying to get your debt to equity ratio lower. And again, if you're involving a seller in this process and the seller is carrying a note, we would oftentimes ask that seller to sign the debt subordination agreement so that they wait for payment. Again, if you have family members, friends, or investors, we may ask them to sign this debt subordination agreement. And every time we get somebody to sign one of those, their note is analyzed by us as part of your equity contribution. So to give you some real fixed examples here, if your total asset base was $100,000, your equity issue would need to be $10,000 at a minimum, and the lender loan could be $90,000. Okay, that would give you the maximum allowed debt to equity ratio under the SBA programs. However, let's say you didn't have that 10%. Let's say you personally only had $5,000 to put in this business. Then what we would say is, do you have someone that will gift you money or lend you money so that you can come up with $10,000 total? And you may say yes, you may say no. Okay, we work with that, all right? And again, if it's a family member, friend, and they are willing to put in $5,000 either in the form of a gift or a subordinated note, then you would achieve the $10,000 or 10% minimum in this example. And we would have the opportunity to potentially do a loan for you for $90,000 and meet all of your needs, okay? We're gonna go over some other alternative lenders toward the end of this for other sources, but suffice it to say that when you come into a lender like me, we should be looking at trying to help you figure out how to meet the minimum requirements and what resources there are in the community if you don't have family members, friends, or private investors, and it's not a seller transaction, okay? So again, this is the balance sheet format we're looking at, and the numbers we're trying to get to are at least 9-to-1. The lower that ratio, the more money you have invested in this, the lower the risk to your lender and the more desirable it is for us to do the loan, okay? So let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation and resume where we were at on the capital section, because there are a few more slides in there I want to go over with you. Okay, next slide. We'll go on to number 11. All right, so here's where I want to talk about the legal entity structure. We can lend to any legal entity structure. So we don't care if you're a sole proprietorship or a limited liability company. There are several different types of limited liability companies. We don't care if you're a sub-S or a C corporation. What I wanted you to see is how we would identify what type of entity based on how you're describing your equity section of your balance sheet, okay? So these are different descriptions of how you put money or your business puts money into the equity for each type of company, okay? Next slide. Again, this gives you the visual, 9-to-1. If you have to pay $9 out to your creditors, that's a pretty risky transaction as compared to only having $1 of debt for every $1 of equity in your business. You have more money vested in the business. So again, we evaluate risk based on the leverage ratio. How we calculate it is looking at debt versus your equity contribution. So the higher the ratio, the higher the risk. And these are two examples of 9-to-1, $9 of debt for every $1 of equity you inject into the business, as compared to borrowing $1 for every $1 of debt. I'm sorry, $1 of debt for every $1 of equity that you have. That is a very low leverage or low risk transaction for a lender. So most of the time, most of the borrowers are somewhere in between, okay? What we look at as well here is we go back to that risk management analysis document to compare you to your peers and see how high your risk is relative to others in your industry, okay? And I'll give you an example. Banks tend to have very high leverage ratios, 20-to-1. Other businesses tend to have lower than that, and it's just based on the industry, Okay, so knowing where your industry is at is really key. And that's why I advocate for you to go to the library, look up your RMA status, and try and figure out what's reasonable for you. So you are educated before you come in to a person like me. All right, next slide. All right, so this, I'm going to kind of skip over this because we pretty much have gone through that one multiple times. I don't want to have to reiterate and make you tired. Okay, next we're on to collateral. So the next section of this is, do you have sufficient collateral to secure the loan? Okay, most of the time, most small business owners, even if they've been in operation for a while, don't meet that need. So let's go. All right, again, the desire for a lender is to try and have the liquidation value cover 100% of the loan amount. Okay, that's our desired goal. Most of the time, it's not realistic. Next. Again, each bank, because we're competitors, we have our own advanced formulas on assets, or our own way to calculate what the liquidation value of a particular asset is. Next. We assign an advanced formula or a liquidation value percentage to each type of personal and business asset. Next. Here's the nice thing. Non-owners of the business may pledge collateral on your behalf. So if you have family members or friends who have assets and they are willing to pledge them on your behalf, we will take them to help support your loan if we really need to help motivate us as a lender to do a loan for you. Next. And here's the really nice thing. If you do not have enough collateral, that is the most common reason we do a loan in conjunction with a small business administration guarantee. Next. Okay, so now we're going to look at the how we look at collateral. So as from an SBA standpoint, these advanced percentages are standard when we're doing an SBA loan. So if you look at the middle column, if I were doing an SBA loan, I would use all of those numbers as a percentage to advance against a particular type of asset, regardless of what institution I was at. If you look at the column on the right, that's an example of kind of the averages that most lenders use. But notice they're up to, or there's a range there, because some lenders are more conservative and they discount the market value of the asset more than other lenders. So that's where competition comes into play. And you need to be a good consumer for your business and talk to more than one lender to try and identify the one that meets your needs the best for your business. So let's look at the type of assets. If you're in operation and you have accounts receivable and you are doing a term loan means that your debt is being repaid over a 12-month period of time, more than 12 months. If I were doing an SBA loan, I would take accounts receivable and discount them down to 10%. So if you had $100,000 in accounts receivable, the liquidation value of them would be $10,000. If I were doing a line of credit, lines of credit typically have a maturity of 12 months or less. And I were doing this loan with an SBA guarantee, I could give you up to 85% against as the advance against those $100,000 in accounts receivable. So a term loan, those accounts would have a value on liquidation of $10,000. But if I were doing a line of credit, they would have a liquidation value of $85,000. Okay. And it's all about the timing of the risk, because on a term loan, I'm usually going out 10 years. On a line of credit, I'm only going out 12 months. So I have a higher opportunity to liquidate those accounts receivable if I had to in a short period of time to give them more value to you and to me as a lender. Okay, moving along to inventory. Again, I'm sorry, we're going back. I'm not done with collateral yet. I just want you to see on inventory, if we were doing a term loan, same concept, up to 10 years, the liquidation value with an SBA guarantee would be 10%. If I were doing a line of credit for that inventory, I would give you credit up to 50%. Machinery and equipment, used equipment and machinery, the advanced percentage would be 50%. If it were brand new, it would be 75. Furniture has a 10% liquidation value because most of the time it deteriorates and it doesn't have much resale value. With leasehold improvements and tenant improvements, with the SBA, there is zero liquidation value. Why? Because we're not going to go in and take out the drywall or the fixtures or the flooring. It really has no resale value to us. All right. If I were lending you an owner-occupied commercial real estate for you to buy it or buy an existing building or buy land and do ground-up construction, I could advance you up to 90% against the cost or appraised value, whichever is less, using an SBA product. Okay. Owner occupied for an existing building means that your business occupies 51% of the building. On a brand new construction, ground up, where you're buying land and building a new building, you need to occupy 60% with your operating company. Unimproved land is limited to 50%. And then again, fixtures is 0. So those are all the business asset liquidation values. On the personal side, we look at if you have certificates of deposit that will be left after your injection into your business. If you have stocks or bonds, we look at the market value and we may advance 50 to 60% of those as of the day that we're looking at doing the loan. Vehicles, we may do up to 75%. And then we may do a lien on your primary residence. That's at the discretion of the lender. And I've done some calculations down at the bottom for you. But here's again what I really want you to hear me say. If you don't have enough liquidation value collateral, you are still eligible for a loan. The SBA will extend a guarantee to a lender like me, even if there is not enough liquidation value collateral. But we have to evaluate it and we have to ask you for it. Those are the rules, okay? So don't be disheartened if you don't have a lot of assets. You're still eligible for an SBA guaranteed loan. Okay, now the next slide. Now we're on to the character section. And this is the one that I always like because I am a character. If you saw me running around in real life, my hands are flying and I'm having a good time. Okay, but the thing is that when we're evaluating character as it relates to a loan, it's not how goofy is Janie, but it's based on how have I paid my debts, okay? And when we're doing a loan, either conventionally or with an SBA guarantee, we as lenders typically require any 20% or more owner of the business to personally guarantee the loan. It is at 20% or more, it's required on an SBA loan that a 20% or more owner be a personal guarantor. All right. So what we're always telling people is that if there's more than one owner and you don't know what their credit score is, you might want to find that out before you go into business with them. Because if you have a wonderful credit score and they don't, their negative credit score could impact your ability to borrow money for your business. All right. So what I encourage everyone to do before they come and see a lender is to get a copy of their credit report from one or more of the credit reporting agencies. They are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You are allowed to ask them for one free credit report per year. That does not impact your score. It's a soft, what we call a soft pull. When you come to a lender like me and you sign one of our application documents, you are giving us permission to pull your credit report. That, when we pull it, it's a hard pull and it creates a negative on your credit history. Okay? Soft pulls do not. So when you get a report from Experian or Equifax or TransUnion on your own, we're going to be able to see what your credit history is. It may not give us a score, but looking at your credit history, the number of trade lines you have, how you've paid your obligations, whether or not you have any derogatory public information like a collection, a lien, a levy, any of that, we're going to be able to see that from the document that you give us. And we're going to be able to give you high quality feedback on this character piece by looking at what you're giving us rather than dinging your credit and having us pull a report. Okay, next. Here's the thing. Most lenders want to see a particular score. That varies from lender to lender. At my institution, we have a minimum score of 650, all right? Some other institutions start at 675 or 680. That's, again, where competition comes into play, all right? So when you're working with your lender, it's a good idea to ask them, do you have minimum credit score requirements? What are they? So that you are informed, all right? And if you have things, let's say your score is a little bit low and you have some collections or a judgment or a lien or levy or something like that. What I encourage people to do is bring your accounts current, pay your collections, get the judgments taken care of. And within a 12 to 18 month period of time, if you do that, your credit score will be rehabilitated. All right. And oftentimes it's way less than that. I've seen people's credit scores, if they had late pays or they have a lot of debt, if they are diligent in the course of 3 to 6 months, if they keep their payments current and get their balances down, pay their collections, their credit score may improve by 20 to 30 points in a very short period of time, like 3 to 6 months, rather than 12 to 18. So understand what's on your credit report. get the little foibles, problems corrected as timely as you can, and then present yourself again to a lender. And here's the thing, when we're looking at an SBA program loan for you, if you have defaulted on any federal debt, such as a VA or FHA home loan, student loans, other SBA program loans, or U.S. Department of Agriculture business and industry loans, if you've defaulted on any of those, you're not eligible technically to borrow again within a federal program. There are a few exceptions, and I've had borrowers in the past that have been granted them, but the rule of thumb is you're really not eligible. This is why it's so important to pay those debts, keep them paid timely, and get them caught up. The other thing I want to just mention here is that if you owe the IRS money on tax obligations, but you have a payment plan that you are working on and you are paying as agreed, even though you owe the federal government money, as long as you've got a payment plan and you're honoring that, paying it as agreed, you are eligible to participate in an SBA product. Okay, so that's one exception, because you're not in default, you're actually paying the debt obligation. All right, next slide. Okay, so again, in summary here, review your credit history from one that you get yourself. A lot of people now have a credit reporting service and they see it more frequently. So just correct the problems. When you get to a bankruptcy, if you have had one in your past, most lenders will want you to be outside of that bankruptcy by a 5-year period of time. Okay, so they really don't want to see you applying for a loan until your credit's rehabilitated and you're 5 years away from that bankruptcy. All right, however, the SBA, when there is a bankruptcy in your history, there are basically 3 allowable reasons for having a bankruptcy. If you've had a marital dissolution that impacted your income stream, that's one reason. If you've had a job loss and it was severe and you couldn't get reemployed and you had to file a bankruptcy, that's another one. And the third one is if you had a catastrophic illness and you didn't have insurance coverage and you had to file a bankruptcy, that's the third reason. And sometimes it's a combination of all 3. So it can be one or more of those. And those are, again, potentially acceptable reasons that the SBA will allow, because they should be, or you think about them as one-time events, not something that's going to be repetitive. All right, next. All right, so before I do the alternative sources of financing, I'm going to just summarize. What we covered so far is a little bit about the SBA programs that are out there, the state resources that are out there, and places where you can get information. We've covered the 5 C's of credit. And again, when you're thinking about the 5 C's, I want you to think about how you're incorporating them into your business plan to make that business plan as strong as possible, okay? And really focus on your skills and abilities, and that yours and that of any other owners, to make your business successful, because that potential success should transfer over from a monetary or numeric standpoint into the cash flow projection and how you put that together and how you write your assumptions. And then the rest is by the numbers. You have to put a certain amount of money in based on the bank you're working with. You know that it's at least 10% of the total assets needed to do your business, in conjunction with an SBA guarantee. We're going to take what collateral we need to take to get you in compliance with the SBA underwriting, and we're going to look at your credit history. Where the SBA guarantee comes into play to help you is on your equity injection requirement, the weakness that may be there for the collateral, and if you have a slightly spotty credit history. Okay? All right. So let's talk about alternative sources of financing. Where does money come from you? So let's pop the slide because you'll have, I think, 3 or 4 things populate. Okay. Personal savings, including certificates of deposit. If you have savings or CDs that you can liquidate and inject into the business, that works. If you have marketable securities, you may be able to borrow from them or liquidate them and transfer that money into your business. If you have a pension plan or an IRA, 401k plan, or if you're in the government and have a TSP, which is the government equivalent of a 401k plan, you may be able to borrow from them and transfer that money into your business and have it not be a taxable event. But the other thing that the SBA and the IRS allow you to do is if you do right now a C corporation, you can set up your own corporation's 401k plan. And what you can do is transfer money from your IRA or your 401k or your TSP and invest that in your C corporation's 401k plan. That is not a taxable event, and you don't have penalties because you're transferring retirement funds into another retirement plan. You can use that money however you need to in your business. So you're investing in yourself, okay? You can borrow money from your home if you have equity in your home and transfer that money into your business. You can sell personal assets. You can have family members or friends gift you money. If it's gifted, it's an equity injection in your business. That's different from borrowing from your family members and friends. If you borrow from them, then your business has to create a note payable back to them. They can sign a debt subordination agreement, and then we would analyze it as equity. But gifted money is just a gift. You don't have to repay it. That automatically is part of the equity. And here's the other kicker. You can use credit cards, okay, but that are in your personal name, but I really want you to use them prudently, okay? A lot of business owners use them to buy inventory and then they pay it back the same month and get this balance down to 0, okay? Credit cards do provide a detailed history of expenses, which helps you at tax time. But, look at your interest rate, look at your fees. Don't borrow off of a card that has a 30% interest rate, okay? That's not good use and prudent use of a card, all right? Next slide. Okay, if you're an existing business, or you may be starting out, here's a couple of ways. You could ask your customers for a deposit, a down payment, cash up front for what you're going to do for them, all right? And let's say you're a furniture builder. When somebody places an order, you can ask them for 25% down. That may cover your material cost and part of your labor, okay? That's a customer deposit. If you're an existing business, you could apply for a line of credit using either accounts receivable or inventory or both. If you're an existing business and you have accounts receivable, you could sell them to a factoring company. A factoring company actually buys your account receivable at a discounted value, so you get money right away. And when your customer pays on the account receivable, they actually pay it to the factoring company, not to you. So you have to be really careful about when you're using factors if you're an existing business. Vendors, you can get terms from your suppliers, your vendors. You may be able to get 30 days, 60 days, 90 days before you have to pay your vendors for product. So work with them, negotiate them. If you are in business and you've been stockpiling inventory, you can always sell your stale inventory before it's obsolete. At least try and sell it at cost, or maybe take a little discount. But that's a way of getting cash before your inventory becomes obsolete. And think about leasing different things. You can lease furniture, equipment, vehicles, your building space, okay? Instead of having a cash outlay for the whole thing, just lease it, okay? Your lease payments are tax deductible, and to get a lease, you only have to generally put in the first and last month and maybe a damage deposit, depending on the type of asset you're dealing with. But it's a low cash outlay way to obtain fixed assets. Again, you can get credit cards in the business name, and you can borrow from family members, friends, and if you're buying a business, you may be able to borrow from the seller, and they may do seller financing for you. Next slide. Okay, so when you're looking at financial institutions like a commercial bank or a credit union, we offer lines of credit, term loans. We may be able to do the loan in conjunction with the Small Business Administration if you're in a rural market area. Rural is generally defined as having a population base of less than 50,000 people, okay? Some areas that have less than 50,000 people, 50, are still not considered rural if they're abut a very large urban area. So if you're from here, think of Medina. Medina has a population base of less than 50,000, but it's in a metropolitan area abutting Bellevue, Seattle, however you want to look at it. Medina would not qualify as being rural under the U.S. Department of Agriculture rules, okay? And but if you are in a rural market, I'm going to tell you that the U.S. Department of Agriculture loan guarantee products for business purposes are very attractive and very competitive with the Small Business Administration products. Next slide. Okay, let's just whip those out. Just do them all. So, okay, so remember when we were talking about the capital side of or capital section, I said that there were other alternative lenders, that a lender like me, if I'm evaluating your application and your business plan, and I believe that you're going to be successful, but let's say you don't have enough equity to meet my financial institution's requirements. I'm going to put on my creative lender hat, and I'm going to think about other lenders that are in the community that I can partner lend with. In our area, you have Craft 3, Business Impact Northwest, Ventures, Mercy Corps, and Evergreen Business Capital. All of them borrow money from the Small Business Administration and re-lend it in the community. As a matter of fact, all 5 of those could be your first lender, okay? If your loan amount is in their maximum bucket, okay? Craft 3 can do millions of dollars in loans. Business Impact Northwest generally maxes out their SBA loans at, I have to think now, it's either $250,000 or $350,000. Ventures and Mercy Corps max out at $50,000. Evergreen Business Capital maxes out either at 250 or 350, depending on the program that they're using. Okay, so they are a great co-lender for a financial institution like me. So what we do is they take a second position behind a bank or a credit union, and we have an intercreditor agreement, and they acknowledge that the lender or the credit union gets to be repaid first in a worst case scenario. And because we have this intercreditor agreement, and because they're willing to wait for payment behind us, we again can treat their loan as equity for analysis purposes as part of your transaction. So they're a great resource in the community, not only for you, but for us to help you get money, okay? Pierce County Community Investment Corporation covers Pierce County excluding the city of Tacoma. The city of Tacoma has resources within the city proper, and then there are a couple other resources that I've listed here. But we can, again, co-lend with them all if they're willing to do an intercreditor agreement with us. Outstanding resources in the community. But because they take on a little bit more risk, their interest rates are typically 2 to 3% higher than a traditional bank or credit union loan. Okay, next slide. Excuse me. Okay, then there's all of the other kinds of, funding out there. The crowdfunding, social funding, that's all the computer stuff that you can go out in the community and say, I want to have a GoFundMe account, or, that's just one example. But crowdfunding is actually a source of getting money. The Small Business Investment Corporation is another entity where you can get resources and help for your business. That information is on the SBA website. There are angel investors, people that have been in an industry that want to see it continue to thrive. They will put money and intelligence from their work history in an industry into your business. Venture capital is the highest risk out of all of them, because quite frankly, venture capitalists can take over your business if you're not managing them properly. But venture capitalists tend to want some type of product that's really new or innovative coming in, and they want to have seasoned management and something where they can come in, fund, and get a high return and then get out. Okay, so venture capitalists are not, that funding source is not for everyone. And then think about sharing the ownership. Have a partnership or a limited liability company, a corporation, even an employee stock ownership program where you're getting multiple people to come together to help be investors in your business as some type of owner, equity owner in your company. Next. Okay, that's it. I think I actually made it pretty darn close to 8:30. So I appreciate your time and thoughtfulness tonight. And I know this is a little bit different because I'm not in front of you. But again, I really appreciate you staying on and getting through the course. Are there any questions?
There are none in the chat box.
Okay. Well, thank you, and good. I wish you much success with your business. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Duncan. Appreciate you managing the slides and getting all that together. And I hope everybody learned a lot of good information for their business this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Janie. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Janie. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, participants. I'm glad you stayed to the end. It's a movie well worth watching. So thanks again. I'll be sending out the materials shortly.